president wants to spy on 200 million Americans without a warrant. Has he read this document, which he was sworn to uphold?
Now, I will not have you libel Abraham Lincoln.
I don't understand the problem with registering guns. We register cars.
Mark Levine brings you the news the government doesn't want you to know.
Today, an explosive story about connections between white supremacists and Islamic terrorists.
When there's a conflict between Scalia's conservative values and the Constitution of the United States, he throws away the Constitution.
When we do have secret prisons, that is not what America's all about. Let's go to Mark in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Good evening, America. Welcome to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Mark Levine. Well, we did it. According to the Washington Post, actually today's Washington Post, my prediction of 332 electoral votes back in September came true. And that means I won the In the Loop contest. I get a free T-shirt. I was actually the third person in the nation to predict that 332, beaten out by apparently an 8th grader and a New Jersey lawyer. But I was number three. I'll get my In the Loop T-shirt. So yes, I predicted 332 electoral votes. The question now is not what happened in the election, we all know that, but what will happen in the future. In particular, Whither the Republican Party, will they recognize that if they continue in the direction they've been going, they will increasingly become a minority party, or will they reach out to minorities and to women and to young people and to gay people and to African Americans, Latinos and Asians and all the rest of this nation that they've been ignoring so much for so long? To help me answer those questions and many other issues, I've got my preeminent Republican guest, Mike Lane, the president of Intelligence Strategies. Welcome again to the Inside Scoop, Mike.
Thank you, Mark. I don't know what you talk about. We did it, but, whatever you want to use,
well,
that's fine.
I was precinct captain in Alexandria. Right. I'm very proud of the work that, actually, you were precinct captain as well, at same precinct.
Our viewers may not know that we're opposite precinct captains in the same precinct.
So I think we won my precinct, but it's a pretty blue city, Alexandria, so I won't
You
take
won
credit
your precinct, but I beat my goals.
You beat your goal.
I beat my goals.
All right, so let's talk about Republicans' national goals. I think Republicans woke up surprised by the result. I think Mitt Romney claims that he didn't even prepare a concession speech. He was that certain he was going to win. You saw my prediction. I predicted 332. I just won a little award for that. Why do you think Republicans got it so wrong?
Well, I think that they expected to win. I expected the Republicans to win.
You thought McCain was going to win?
Romney.
Excuse me. McCain.
I actually didn't have that much confidence in McCain.
I've already forgotten Romney.
I didn't have that much confidence in McCain 4 years ago. I sort of saw that handwriting on the wall. But no, I expected Romney to win. My prediction, depending on which pool I was in, I was either at 303 or 295 on the Electoral College for Romney. But here's what happened. Look, there were a lot of close states, not just in the presidential thing, but there were a lot of close House races and a lot of close Senate races. And almost every close race fell in your direction.
That's true.
And that doesn't normally happen if it's not a wave year. And so when you have a closely fought thing, those close states invariably fall, one way, one the other way, and it didn't happen this time.
And the reason it didn't happen is because this was a wave year. Democrats not only voted for, a majority of Americans not only voted for the President of the United States, the majority of Americans voted for a Democratic senator, and a majority of Americans voted for a Democratic congressman. You add up all the votes for Democrats in the House of Representatives and all the votes for Republicans, and we beat the Republicans hands down. Now, because y'all have managed to draw district lines in various states, even blue and purple states like, Virginia, for example, or Pennsylvania and Ohio and Minnesota and Wisconsin and a whole number of states, because of gerrymandering the lines, your party still manages to control the House of Representatives. But I would argue the House of Representatives is the least representative body in government because a majority of Americans wanted Nancy Pelosi to be Speaker. So you lost on all fronts, even though, because of technicalities, legal technicalities, your party manages to retain the House of Representatives.
Mark, are you sitting here and trying to tell me that 51% of the vote is a wave election?
It's a majority.
No, sir.
It's a majority.
It is not a wave election.
In a democracy, a majority counts.
All right, so you'll take back the wave comment. And
the reason they all fell on our side was not because it was a massive landslide, and I don't claim that it is, but the polls were consistently showing a Democratic advantage really most of the election period. And I would argue that, your party, I got to say, I don't mean you particularly, but I heard people on Fox News, there were websites, unskewed polls, they literally took the poll results that said Obama was going to win, and they added a whole bunch of Republicans, subtracted a bunch of Democrats, and lo and behold, if you change the poll numbers to make Romney wins, Romney wins. But they were in denial, let's face it.
No, I don't think it was denial. I think it was a misreading of, look, President Obama got 7 million votes less than he got the last time. That was almost to the vote what I thought he wasn't going to get. I thought he was going to lose between 6.5 and 7.5 million votes out of his 08 total.
Are you including all the votes that were counted in California? Because I'm not talking about election night. A lot of votes have been counted in the last week.
He was right where I thought he was going to be. He was down measurably substantially. I thought, I misread the street, I thought that not only was Romney going to get McCain's vote, but Romney was going to get 2 million of Obama's 7 million votes that he wasn't going to get, and we were going to get 3 million more. So I thought
John McCain beat Romney handily.
So I thought, well, he didn't by 1 million votes, but
a lot more than that.
No, by the time they counted them all, it's down to 1 million votes, 1,000,001, something like that. But I thought Romney would get about 5 or 6 million more than he got. And so the alleged enthusiasm
why didn't you believe
gap.
The polls? It wasn't just you. Republicans seemed
because
to
the enthusiasm gap was so obviously visually on our side, and I don't believe
you
that...
You didn't see the enthusiasm on our side. You weren't going to our rallies.
I heard about it.
No,
I saw. Look, your rallies were down substantially. The rallies were in northern Ohio, where just the week before the election, Obama packed 80,000 people into the stadium 4 years ago. This time he packed 8,000 people into the stadium.
And Romney packed a few hundred. That was what's so amazing.
No, Romney was
on election night, Barack Obama's out there in Chicago in a public gathering, tens of thousands of people. Mitt Romney has a gathering with a few hundred people, and even then, if you paid a little bit of money, you got to get closer to the stage. Even to the very last day, Romney showed that he was a creature of the 1%, that he was of the 1%, by the 1%, for the 1%.
Mark, look,
and he confirmed that when after the election.
Look, you won. Be a little bit gracious about it. Take a bow, but let's be honest about where the both candidates were now. Mitt Romney was a perfectly fine gentleman. He was nowhere near the pathetic caricature that Obama spent $150 million creating of him in negative advertising. He's a decent guy, a great father, a fantastic husband, and he's somebody that you and I would both like our daughters to have met back in those times.
I'm not attacking him as a father or as a husband. I never have.
And he's not, this 1% BS is exactly what it is. Romney wants to represent 100% of the people as Obama does.
And Romney said so. Here's what I found amazing.
That's bull.
He said the 47% comment before the election. Afterwards, he said, no, I didn't mean what I said in private to a bunch of well-heeled people. Actually, I want to represent 100%. Then the day after the election, he goes on a phone call to 200, 300 people, and he excoriates minorities.
He did no such thing. Come on.
He said Obama's people's got gifts.
Young
people got gifts. Latinos got gifts. What he's arguing is that, half of America's moochers. So let's talk about his half that's moochers. Because Romney got gifts. Romney gets a massive gift of tens of millions of dollars in tax benefits that no other ordinary American gets.
You better explain what you mean. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Hedge funds, carried interest rates.
Hedge funds what? Tell me exactly where he's cheating on the tax code.
I didn't say he's cheating. He gets legal gifts.
Harry Reid said he cheated on the tax code. He flat out said he cheated.
I know what Harry Reid said. Here's the thing. Romney's not saying that Obama supporters got illegal gifts. He's saying that they got legal gifts. They got legal gifts. Let's talk about the legal gifts that Mitt Romney and other extremely rich people get. Romney only has to pay 10% of his income.
First of all, Romney's never held the presidency, so he wasn't in a position to give anybody any gifts. So your comparison is...
the gifts that your party supports, that Romney supports. So what you're saying is that because some poor starving person gets $6 a day to eat, and because Mitt Romney gets tens of millions of dollars from people like me, people like you, that his gift means nothing, and the poor starving person is a moocher. That's your party's position.
I don't believe in his recitation that he talked about anybody who was poor or starving. That wasn't what he was talking about, Mark. He was talking about the illegal order to stop enforcement of illegal aliens deportation.
If it's illegal, take the president
he was talking about the unconstitutional ruling from HHS to force religious institutions to provide
if it's unconstitutional, take it to court.
We'll take it to court, and I'll bet you we'll win. Those are the gifts he was talking. He wasn't talking about anybody who was getting their food. Come on.
Students for getting student loans.
No, he did not. Not once. Not once. Give me the quote and the time and the place where it happened. It didn't happen.
He said Obama supporters got gifts. He's the same guy that said that 47% of Americans are losers.
He wasn't talking about tuition, Mark, and he certainly wasn't talking about veterans' benefits. Veterans voted overwhelmingly for Romney.
But who are the Obama supporters that got gifts? I heard Bill O'Reilly say on election night, Obama supporters want stuff. They want free stuff.
Did you see
what is this free stuff?
Did you see the Obama phone? Did you see the Obama phone video that went viral in Ohio at his rally? Did you see that one?
No, I want to know what the free stuff is.
Well, free cell phones. Free cell phones for one. Okay. Free cell phones.
Really? Because I'm an Obama supporter, and I paid for my cell phone.
Right. So you did, didn't you?
So let me ask you this.
So how many quote Obama phones are out there? Are there over?
Romney said
Romney
said Obama supporters got stuff. What percentage of Obama supporters do you think got free stuff? What? 100%? 90%?
Okay.
10%? 1%? 12 people in Ohio?
No.
I mean, come on. Romney is playing into this Republican idea.
No, he's not.
That Bill O'Reilly supports, that Glenn Beck and the people on your far right support.
Who's Glenn Beck?
Who's Glenn Beck?
Who's Glenn Beck?
that Obama and the Democratic Party is somehow giving gifts to his people to get them to vote. What percentage of Obama supporters got free gifts? Because I didn't get mine. Where's my gift? All I got was a T-shirt from the Washington Post.
The problem with the Romney campaign was not the people who came out to vote for Obama, although there are
according to Romney, it was.
Well, I'm disagreeing with him. Okay.
All right.
It wasn't the number of people who came out to vote for Obama. He was down by 7 million votes. The problem was Romney didn't get his vote out. And if he had gotten his vote out, he would be the president-elect of the United States of America.
The reason he didn't get his vote out is because Romney has made it clear that he really dislikes half of America.
No,
he thinks
Mark,
half of America, he thinks 47% of America
is
moochers, is victims, is entitled. And, you know, even if he didn't mean that quote to become public, and I'm sure he didn't, for him to state publicly the day after the election or 2 days after the election the exact same thing, all I got to say is Mitt Romney's gotten far more gifts from the American taxpayers than any one of the Obama supporters when he only has to pay 10% of his income in taxes.
Well,
and that's way too
first
much.
of all, you know he pays the full 15% that's required for any investment income in the United States. And he pays the full 15%, with the exception of deductions for charitable contributions, of which he makes in excess of $3 million a year.
What I'm saying is his tax returns show he'll only pay 10%. That's one of the things we need to fix when we talk about the fiscal cliff, which is coming up next. If you want to dial in, 571-749-1166.
She's had more than a dozen fractures. And in the next few years, she faces 2 major surgeries to strengthen her fragile bones. She's only 10 years old. Most people don't worry about fragile bones until late in life. For those with osteogenesis imperfecta, brittle bones are a concern throughout their lifetime. Find out how you can strengthen this child's future.
Diabetes is a killer. After I was diagnosed, I didn't feel sick, so I didn't listen to my doctor. Then it struck. I had a heart attack, then a stroke, and I was only 49.
Most people with diabetes also have high blood pressure and cholesterol, which can cause severe heart damage. In fact, 2 out of 3 people with diabetes die from heart disease or stroke.
Don't let diabetes destroy your life.
Call for your free diabetes survival guide. Choose to live.
Here again, the Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I'm having a spirited discussion with my Republican counterpart, Mike Lane, the president of Intelligence Strategies, talking about the election, what happened, and the future of his party. Look, I think there's a reason why a lot of signature people in your party, people who may very well run for president, people like Chris Christie, Bobby Jindal, Susan Martinez, governors of some important states, people who, I think Chris Christie's running in 2016, they ran away from Mitt Romney, particularly after he made his comment about Obama people getting gifts. Can you agree with me that was a really stupid thing to say? And I think it plays into the idea, which I got to say I really think exists in your party, not you, but people in your party, of believing that half of America really doesn't deserve
not half of America. Look, Mark, the truth used to be an absolute defense. Apparently it no longer is. Romney was correct if impolitic when he made the comment. There are a certain number of people out there.
You're talking about the 47%, or you're talking about the gifts?
I don't think they asked it. I'm talking about the gifts now. I don't think they asked it in the exit polls, but we both know there's a certain number of young college-age women out there for whom getting free birth control was more important than having a job after they graduate from college.
And what about
We'll see how important that is after they graduate and they don't have a job in Obama's
economy. Well, you can see with me that you can see that as many Republicans get gifts as Democrats do.
No.
I mean, whether it's agriculture subsidies, corporate subsidies, tax write-offs, all the gifts.
Is agriculture somehow a Republican enterprise? I thought
Nebraska
that was,
and Kansas are red states. Oklahoma, Texas. My point is this.
Okay. How about Virginia? Virginia's a big farm state.
Government provides for the American people. It provides for students. It provides for the elderly. It provides for farmers. It provides for corporations. It provides for very rich people like Mitt Romney. It provides for very poor people on Medicaid. Obama and Romney supporters get benefits from the government, and all of us use the national parks. To say that only Obama supporters get gifts, I think plays into the old notion of Ronald Reagan's welfare queen, where he's really trying with a dog whistle to talk about minority voters.
Absolutely not. No, the vast majority of them are white voters. Vast majority of them are white voters. Let's not throw the race card in there because it's inappropriate and ugly, Mark.
Well, it is, but
vast number of white voters.
I remember hearing, why can't I think of his name right now? Bill O'Reilly. I remember him talking at the election saying, Democrats want stuff. And America's not the traditional America anymore, and Wally Cleaver isn't around anymore, and there's this new non-white America, and they want stuff. And I got to tell you,
I didn't see Bill O'Reilly, but I'll be the first one to tell you that Bill O'Reilly will tell you on the air frequently that he's not a Republican. Okay. So he doesn't speak for the party. How about the fact that all
Americans want benefits from their government, and there's nothing wrong with that?
I would say that clearly 48% of Americans don't want those kinds of things from their government, and they don't want them given out. Those are the ones who voted for Mitt Romney.
No, people who voted for Mitt Romney get Social Security, they get Medicare, they get farm subsidies.
Social Security is an earned benefit.
I agree.
That is not just something that's given to you for nothing. That's an earned benefit.
I agree with you. Medicare as well.
Yes. Okay,
that's
we're
right.
in agreement. Look, there were no exit polls. We don't know how many people voted for Obama because of whatever gifts were being talked about. My sense is that it wasn't enough to swing the election, that ultimately the analysis there was wrong, that if Camp Romney had done what they needed to do and gotten 6 million more votes out there, he would be the president-elect. And it's a red herring to talk about gifts because it wasn't the deciding factor. The deciding factor was not getting your vote out.
Here's the thing. I think your party is tone deaf. Not you, but I think your party is tone deaf to this idea that Obama supporters just want stuff. This kind of notion, which I would argue goes back to Ronald Reagan and his idea of the welfare queen who gets welfare and drives around a limousine, which even he admitted he didn't know any specific examples. He just kind of thought it happened. There is this notion, and I think it's something that among many Republicans say behind closed doors, that Obama supporters get stuff, and they don't recognize all the stuff that Romney supporters get, that all Americans get, whether it's student loans or Medicare, or Social Security, or agricultural subsidies.
Agricultural subsidies. First of all, you and I are on the same team.
I'm against agricultural subsidies. Let's get rid of agricultural subsidies. You're right. I agree with you on that.
No problem there.
But I also think, though, your party has also, people have talked about in your party.
And I'll phase them out over 1 year.
Fair. I'm fine with that. Not reaching out to minorities, not reaching out to African Americans, to Latino Americans. George Bush, John McCain even famously reached out to Latino Americans. Romney did not, and I think that very much hurt him in this election. Even Asian Americans, over 70% for the Republican Party. Gay Americans, 76%, for the Democratic Party. Gay Americans, 76% for the Democratic Party. Women, 55%. It seems like old, angry, white Southern men is about the only real solid base you've got left in the Republican Party. Well, non-unions. Add non-union into that.
Oh, I think we probably held our own among union members.
I think we won a majority of
union members are very interested in jobs, even if they're leaders or not. Reference Twinkies, okay?
I'm sure we won a majority of union members.
A majority, but we held our own. I mean, the percentages were much closer in terms of union members than anything else.
Doesn't your party?
I'll bet you there wasn't a single union coal miner out there that voted for the president. Not one.
Right, and they all got fired by vindictive bosses.
People
like Robert Murray, who said you have to stand there and give money to Romney or I'm going to fire you. I mean, really vicious people. My point, though, is broader. I think your party needs to reach out to more of America. We have the big tent. Your party does not. No. That's the heart of what I'm saying.
No, we have a big tent. What we do is we expect people to let themselves in. You're very good at going out and dragging them in. We say, hey, we're open. Come on in. And some people do want to be invited in. Look, here's the difference. I'm going to tell you the truth on this, okay? When we, particularly a minority or an ethnic or a demographic community or something like that, when we're going after the Hispanic vote, every Republican committee in America, in every small town, whatever, we all have Hispanic members, and these are typically Hispanic members who don't spend a lot of time working in their own community. They have a job, they're successful, they've risen to a point where they are looking for an opportunity to pursue things they can provide for themselves, and they don't work in their own communities.
What about middle class people?
Hang on. They don't work in their own communities. You guys have people that are working in your own communities. We have people that come join the Republican committee. We got to go into the demographic communities, and we got to find leaders in those communities, and we have to train them to be Republican organizers in the communities, and that's something that you guys excel at, and we don't have a clue on.
Let me suggest to you, and I forget who it was that said this, it was a Republican who said that there's a difference between 5 white guys going out to a Latino and saying, come join us, and having Latinos within the House going out and asking Latinos to join.
Right.
And I think that there is not a lot of native base there. And I also think, given that young people are so democratic, your demographic future is in trouble as a party. I mean, you can keep gerrymandering for a little while, but eventually, unless you reach out to any of those demographics I talked about, whether it's racial minorities or young people or women or gay people, any of the other groups, the Republican parties are going to consistently lose elections.
Well, we need to do better, without a doubt. If we had gotten our vote out this time, we would not have lost. We would have won. We would have beaten the president and sent him home as a one-term president the way he deserved to be. But we didn't get our vote out. Now, getting our vote out is different from finding votes in your column and persuading them to come over. We need to do a much better job on that. We're awful at it, to be honest with you. But getting our vote out was the problem this time. I'm all for let's go into our non-demographic Republican areas and let's start organizing from within rather than sending from the outside in. That's the way we've been doing it, and it doesn't work.
In hindsight, would a different nominee, and I'm not necessarily saying among those running, you could include a Marco Rubio or a Chris Christie or someone who wasn't running, but would a better nominee have been better at getting middle-class young people, minorities out than the one you had? And if so, name him or her.
Two things. I don't think so. I think Mitt Romney was our best candidate this time around. He had everything. He was clearly the better qualified.
Better than Marco Rubio.
Marco Rubio is going to be fine in 4 years. Marco Rubio was
still new.
He was a 2-year senator. I mean, the comparisons to Barack Obama's failed presidency are just enormous. Why would you take one guy who wasn't qualified and replace him with another guy who didn't have the qualifications yet? In 4 years, Marco Rubio will be in the mix. He'll be a leader. Bobby Jindal will be in the mix. He'll be a leader. Susan Martinez will be in the mix. She'll be a leader.
And Paul Ryan will go away because Paul Ryan's plan.
He'll
stay in the House.
No, he'll stay in the House. No, he'll be in the mix.
I think voters solidly rejected Paul Ryan's plan. He's a nice young man. He looks good on camera. I'm sure he's very nice, has a great family. But his ideas are out of the mainstream.
Mark, this was Obama versus Romney. If people were voting on vice president, Joe Biden would have been kicked out years ago. Okay?
People love Joe Biden. Joe Biden 2016. You heard it here first.
Oh, God, please, make my day.
I love Joe Biden. So here we are. We have a Democratic votes in all three branches of government. Of course, the Republicans control the House because they drew the lines because 2010 was a census year. So now we have divided government, and they're going back to the fiscal cliff. Now they are trying to decide what they couldn't agree on 2 years ago, the correct mix of taxes and spending to keep the economy moving, to bring the deficit down, at least in the long term, and to deal with the Democratic and Republican priorities. Mike Lane, are we going over the fiscal cliff?
No.
We're not. When will a deal be made? A week before Christmas?
No.
January? You're not telling me next week.
A couple years from now.
Oh, so we are going over the fiscal cliff.
No,
then.
We're going to kick the can down the road. We're going to make a few changes. We're going to rescind the.
So we're going to remove the cliff and push it off for 2 years.
1 year, 2 years, 3 years, for whatever.
Okay, so to do that.
But there's not going to be a grand bargain, and we're not going to go over the cliff.
We're going to have to raise some revenues.
And
rich people are going to have to pay a little more.
I believe Speaker Boehner has already put revenues on the table. And
well, let's talk about revenues. The tax rates is, of course, what Republicans really don't want to raise because they made that pledge to Grover Norquist, which affects tax rates but doesn't affect deductions. But the CBO says, Congressional Budget Office says, deductions aren't enough to cover the increase in tax rates from 36 to 39.6%. Here's my prediction.
It depends on how many deductions you eliminate and how you do it. Of course, I'll show
for people over $250,000, it's not enough.
Let me ask you this. If I could get you more revenue to the government over 10 years by limiting deductions rather than raising the rates on the rich people, would you take that?
Absolutely, but you'd have to prove you could do it, and you'd have to do it without using dynamic scoring. Okay. You have to do it with the CBO, the traditional arbiter has always said.
Here's the way you do it. As you know, raising the rates to 39.4, 39.6%, whatever it is, on people over $250,000 is going to get you $840 billion over 10 years. I can get you $1.2 trillion over 10 years by limiting deductions to 15% of income for people making $250,000 or more.
The reason I know you can't do it. The reason I know you can't do it.
$1.2 trillion.
My old mentor at Harvard College, Ronald Reagan's chief economics advisor, Martin Feldstein, did a study, and he said if you ended all deductions for people making over $100,000, that would be equivalent. But if the numbers aren't there, Mike, if they are, all accepted. They're all accepted.
Well, I'm not going to give you that much money because we need to cut spending.
Folks, call in at 571-749-1166. Back after this.
Art, a universal language, an expression of culture, of self. And now, thanks to Empowered Women International, a way for emerging and established immigrant and refugee artists and artisans to find hope to earn a living while enriching the lives of all of us. Empowered Women International, making a better America every day. For more information on Empowered Women International's educational programs or to make a tax-free donation, contact C. Fripp at AOL.com.
Here, kitty, kitty. Here, kitty, kitty, kitty. Here, kitty, kitty.
You'd think it would be easy to tell which kids have trouble with their eyesight. But that's not always the case. Even though 1 in 4 children may have a vision problem, eye doctors tell us the symptoms aren't always so obvious. We do know that 80% of all childhood learning is visual. And without good vision, kids can have trouble learning to read. And may fall behind in school. For clues on how to spot the real-life signs of childhood vision problems and what parents can do, visit checkyearly.com. A public service message from the Vision Council of America, and reading is fundamental.
Here again, the Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. The Feldstein plan that I'm looking up here had to do with why Mitt Romney's numbers did not add up. Romney, of course, wanted to even cut taxes. So,
and they should be cut.
So you may be right with regard to the 39.6. Look, I think actually Obama's been very smart here. He hasn't committed himself to the 39.6 tax rate. What he said is we want to bring in the money. I think if Republicans bring in the $800 billion,
they're not going to.
All from taxpayers earning $250,000 or more, then I think Obama doesn't care whether it's tax rates or not. If that doesn't happen, then I advocate going over the fiscal cliff. And I'll tell you why. The Republicans are wedded to this silly pledge that they've signed to Grover Norquist that says you don't increase tax rates. Well, it's very simple. We wait till January 1, tax rates immediately go up to 39.6%. Then after that, Republicans can cut rates down to 38, still higher than the former 36, but lower than the number after the fiscal cliff. Cut the deductions as well. They never break their pledge. Democrats get the revenue they need to cut down on the deficit. Win-win. That's the only way out.
All right.
If your party doesn't agree to it.
No. Your spin, makes some sense. Yes. If you're cutting from 39.6, come on. We've all thought about that and whatever. Grover Norquist, first of all, let's be fair to Grover. I know Grover. I wouldn't call him a friend, but I know him. He's a good guy.
The only Grover I know knows the Cookie Monster. Completely different Grover.
It doesn't say he doesn't say you can't raise tax rates. He says that whatever you do, you can't raise taxes. So he's perfectly okay with.
The pledge said rates. I have to take a look at the pledge.
It's taxes. So you can up rates as long as you have an offsetting tax reduction someplace else. That's perfectly okay with Grover. He's not inflexible
I'll have to
like that.
take a look at the pledge. Right. I thought it was tax rates.
But look, here's your whole premise there, Mark. We're going to go over the fiscal cliff because the Republicans are not going to give the president $840 billion that in revenues. That's just simply not going to happen.
Then let's go over the cliff because the American people voted for it.
No, they didn't.
70% of Americans support that. 55% of people making $1 million or more believe they need to pay more taxes. The vast majority of Americans support it. If the Republicans don't want to follow through, I say go over the fiscal cliff. Let America understand the Republicans don't want to do what 70% of American people want to do, and then we'll for the elections in 2014. We're less afraid of the cliff than you folks are.
Maybe, but let's get our facts and figures straight so that we're talking apples and apples. Are we talking 10-year budget projections or 1-year budget projections here when we say $840 billion?
No, 10-year.
10-year, okay.
Yeah. $80 billion a year. The amount
he may get $80 billion a year.
I think he'll get it.
He may get $80 billion a year.
Okay.
But in return for $80 billion a year, $800 billion in spending reductions is what the price is going to be. It's going to be a 10-to-1.
Over 10 years?
It's going to be a 10-to-1 thing. Yes, it is. Yes, it is, Mark. It's going to be a 10-to-1 thing.
I'll tell you why it won't. We had a whole election over this. And your party lost on this exact point.
Status quo. Come on. It's status quo.
Well, the majority of Americans voted for Democrats at every step of the line. So if your party is not willing to compromise now, then let's let the party of no. Let's have more gridlock. No. Let's have President Obama run against the party of no. Your party said they're going to compromise. What's their compromise?
Compromise is we're putting revenues on the table now that we've never done.
You did that 2 years ago.
No. We're putting revenues on the table now that we've never done before.
Boehner put $800 billion in revenues on the table in 2011.
Not in public, he didn't, and the president walked away from it, pulled the rope out from underneath him, said,
right.
I'm not going to do that.
It wasn't good enough, and the American people agree with Obama.
No.
If your party, this is what I find so interesting. Your party says they're going to compromise, and you haven't even said that you're going to put forward the same offer you did 2 years ago. We say you need to put forward more than you did 2 years ago. We won the election.
No, you didn't win the election. It was status quo, okay?
We won the majority of American voters.
You had
for President, House, and Senate.
You had a 2% pickup in the Senate. Now, I'm not minimizing that. I would rather we had a 2% pickup in the Senate.
We had 23
but you know
Democrats
what, Mark?
running.
It's a status quo, okay?
It's certainly not.
It is.
We had 23 Democrats running. You had 10 Republicans running. And we ended up with 25 Democratic victories and 8 Republican victories.
A 2% pickup in the membership of the Senate.
To 8.
Whoop, whoop.
That's 25 to 8. That's 75%. I'll take that.
I would rather have had your results than our results. I'm stipulating to that. But don't.
When does your party recognize that they lose an election and it's going to change?
Let's go to the M word. You know what? There is no mandate.
Of course there is.
There is no mandate at all.
American people are done with gridlock.
51% is not a mandate. You're going to have to do a lot better than that, and you didn't.
George Bush lost the popular vote in 2000, and he claimed a mandate. In 2004, he barely eked out Ohio, and he claimed a mandate.
Right, and he was wrong.
This election is far better than either of George Bush's, I hate to even call them victories.
Mark,
let's just say presidencies.
Read my lips. The president went up to the microphones and he said, I won. I have some political capital now. I'm going to spend it. And you know what? He spent it on nothing, and that's exactly what's going to happen to Obama.
He spent it on privatizing Social Security.
There's no mandate here. There's no political capital. There's nothing going on.
I think the American people see this, and they say, wow, Republicans are really clueless. They don't even realize they lost the election. You don't like it.
Mark, 51%. You won. There's no mandate in 51%.
I see. So unless the Democrats win 60%, I'll tell you this, if your party continues to be the party of no.
If you had 54, 55%, that's a mandate.
If your party continues to say, we will not compromise, which is apparently what you're saying now.
No, we just said we're putting $800 billion of revenue on the table.
That was put on in 2011. A compromise means more.
It was never publicly put there. It was never publicly put there.
And what did we publicly put there?
And the president would not compromise. The president said, unless you give me $1.2 trillion in revenue, I reject the whole thing. I'm yanking the rug out, and I'm canceling the deal.
Simpson-Bowles wants 1 to 1.
It's a 10 to 1 is the number. No, Simpson-Bowles wants 3 or 4 to 1. They don't want 1 to 1. Simpson-Bowles wants 3 or 4 to 1.
Unless it's 1 to 1, let's go over the fiscal cliff. And all the Americans will understand that the Republicans are bringing this recession.
As long as you take responsibility for it.
Sure, the Republicans can
do it.
If we go over the fiscal cliff, because Republicans won't move one iota from where they were pre the election, I think the American people are going to blame the Republicans. I really do.
First of all, in the campaign, Obama offered 5 to 2. $5 in spending cuts for each $2 in revenue. He offered that in the campaign. So you can't go to 1 to 1. You're going backwards from where he was. The magic number is 10 to 1. And you know what? We'll probably compromise. We'll probably give you 9 or 8 to 1, but it ain't going to go below that.
Simpson-Bowles was 3 to 1.
3 to 1, right.
That's right.
But Obama,
That's right. 3 to 1 is not good enough.
It was his commission, and he didn't even acknowledge that they had a report.
So I guess we all better sell our stock now, because it sure sounds like if this is the Republican attitude, we're going over the fiscal cliff.
No. If the Democrats won't compromise, if the president won't compromise, if Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi won't compromise, then they are going to drive us over the fiscal cliff.
I'll tell you what we need to do is basically, if we make the rich pay back all the massive money they took over the last 10 years, then we'd have enough money. We wouldn't even have to raise taxes.
You're being amorphous.
No, the heart of the problem is that Republicans are only looking out for a tiny minority of American people.
Mark,
and most of us seem to understand that we're not hedge fund managers. We don't have horses in the Olympics. We are not in the Republican Party.
You didn't used to throw gratuitous comments out like that. I think,
I think Romney represents your party.
The horse thing is a little bit much. It really is.
Did he not have a horse in the Olympics? Come on.
It's a little much, Mark.
Should I talk about the car elevator instead? I mean,
okay. Let's talk about all those kids that went to the Olympics and probably their parents were able to get them good coaching. If they were,
I support kids in the Olympics.
Are we going to? Are we going to reject them as well?
No, I don't support tax write-offs for Rafalka. I do support tax write-offs for kids in the Olympics.
All right. Well, we'll argue about those kinds of things. The point is, it's going to be close to a 10 to 1 ratio for it to work.
No, it'll never happen. Never in a million years.
Well, then I regret that the Democrats are going to drive us off the cliff.
Here's what you know what? Bill Clinton you Republicans argued that with Bill Clinton. They said, if Bill Clinton doesn't give us everything we want, we're going to shut the government down.
Mark,
and Bill Clinton said the American people are going to blame you if you shut the government down.
You know what we want? We want no.
You want it your way or the highway.
We want no revenue increases. We're going to give you $800 billion in revenue increases. But
all right, let me give you another possible solution. I know Republicans claim to care about the solvency of entitlements. Here's my solution to the solvency of entitlements. All we do is we require everyone to pay a flat rate. Here's the party of flat rate. We say that millionaires and billionaires have to pay the same percentage of payroll taxes as janitors and teachers. Seems to me, instead of having a regressive tax, we have a fair flat tax One payroll tax paid to every American, and now Social Security and Medicare are solvent for decades more.
All right.
How's that for your party?
More than decades. But since it's an earned benefit, I assume that they're going to get benefits back when they retire equivalent to what they put into it.
Nope.
Since it's an earned benefit, it's not a welfare program. It's an earned benefit.
It's to fix the solvency of the problem.
Then it's no longer an earned benefit. You're changing it into a welfare program?
It's still an earned benefit. It's an insurance program. You get insurance if you need it. Insurance if you need it. If those people lose all their money and run and become poor, they'll get the same benefit.
I think the solution is out there. You know, the solution is that you're just not going to retire at 65 anymore and collect Social Security.
Well, first of all, it's already gone up to 67.
Right, and it's going to go up to 70. And we both know that. It's going to go to 70. We know that Warren Buffett and Bill Gates are no longer going to collect Social Security. That's off the table.
Mike,
they don't need it, and they're, you know, these are the solutions.
If your party doesn't recognize that it lost this election, and that it's got to move closer to where the majority, the middle of American people are, you're going to keep losing more elections. That's what I think.
You know what? Here's my thought about the future. After 4 more years of Barack Obama, any one of our candidates is going to be elected in 2016.
You know, I thought it would only be
the American people aren't going to tolerate 23 million Americans without jobs for 4 more years, and that's where we're going.
Mitch McConnell,
it's more of the same.
No, we're actually going to have a very strong economy in the next few years due to Barack Obama. I'm very proud of that. But Mitch McConnell said, how do I get that? Consumer confidence. It's the highest ever. New housing starts. Record highs, highest since the Bush recession. Manufacturing is up. Jobs numbers are up. Unemployment numbers are down.
And we're going
the only thing that will put us in the wrong number.
The unemployment numbers are up. GDP.
We're below 8.
GDP is down. That's the key thing that drives everything. GDP is down, Mark.
The reason why people are nervous is because your party threatened to throw us off the fiscal cliff. Let's hope they don't do it.
For 15 minutes, you've sat here telling me that you are going to throw us off the fiscal cliff, and you're perfectly good with it.
No.
We're not going anywhere near the fiscal cliff. We're willing to compromise. You're the ones who are absolutely intransigent.
It's not a compromise to say we're going to insist on our prior positions and the election means nothing to us. That's not a compromise.
You know what, Mark? If I was elected from a congressional district or from a state as a senator or something like that, I represent the people of my state.
I agree.
I don't report to Barack Obama. I report to the people who hired me.
And people need to recognize the majority of Americans voted for Democrats at every level of government for a reason. And, you know, we got to re-gerrymander the lines, maybe draw equal lines, maybe even, how about this, a constitutional amendment to prohibit gerrymandering. How about that? Would you support that? I know I would. In every one of the 50 states, make it fair.
I think gerrymandering is a big problem, and I oppose it, but I don't know what the solution is. I'm not going to give you a constitutional amendment at this point, but I agree gerrymandering is a problem.
Well, it certainly is. In a state like Virginia that voted for Barack Obama, where you have 8 Republicans out of 11, with fair lines, it'd be 5-6. It wouldn't be 8-3. I mean, that's true in Ohio, that's true in Florida, that's true in Pennsylvania.
Presidential year turnout is so different from off-year turnout, and that's when the Republicans were elected in the off years, because unlike our people this year who didn't come out to vote, your people don't come out in off-year elections. It's a fact.
We're going to get them out. We're going to get them out in 2014.
We have to. You haven't done it in 200 years. Why would you start now?
Well, you have a point there, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out in state elections, too. You listen, Virginia voters? 2013 is an election year. Don't only vote in presidential years. When we come back, we're going to talk about foreign policy, where we might actually find some agreement, believe it or not. Or maybe not. We'll find out right after
this. Saving for retirement might be easy for some folk, but for others, it might take a little more work. And for those who haven't started, there are still things you can do to catch up.
Oh, that is good news.
Like getting out from underneath past debt. And don't get wrapped up with high-interest credit cards.
Get you some eyes.
Be diversified with your investments. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Your financial goals are not out of reach. The choice is clear. For a happy ending, choose to save.
Everyone with alcohol and drug addiction is in the same boat. With treatment, you can find solid ground. For drug and alcohol information and treatment referral for you or someone you know, call 1-800-662-HELP.
Dude, are you sure you want this tattoo? Because just do it. some mistakes in life are permanent. Like hearing loss. To learn how to protect your hearing, visit asha.org.
You've probably heard about heart disease, but did you know that it's the #1 killer of women nationwide? Heart disease claims more lives each year than breast cancer, lung cancer, or strokes combined. But there are steps you can take to protect yourself against it. For more information on how you can prevent heart disease, contact your local American Heart Association or visit their website at www.americanheart.
The Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. We are going to get to foreign policy. Before we do, I do have a copy of the Americans for Tax Reform Taxpayer Protection Pledge, Grover Norquist's organization. This is from his website, where he requires members of the House of Representatives to pledge to the taxpayers that they will oppose any and all efforts to increase the marginal income tax rate for individuals and or businesses, and 2, oppose any net reduction or elimination of deductions and credits unless matched dollar for dollar by further reducing tax rates. So Grover Norquist is all about tax rates, and that's why I think actually going off the fiscal cliff but then fixing it a week later in January would be a way where the Republicans would not violate the pledge and they could still increase tax rates from the current levels but lower than the pre-Bush tax cuts, the Clinton rates.
I was wrong on that particular thing as it pertained to our discussion. I was talking about the text that I'm more familiar with than this is the text that they use for state races, which may even vary state to state, but that's not the same text that they use in Virginia.
Okay, fair enough. Let's move on to foreign policy, where we might actually reach some agreement. First of all, of course, there's a war going on, or at least a proto-war, a possible, I don't know what you call it, a skirmish that may well lead to a full-scale war between Israel and Gaza. What happened is Gaza, the Hamas government began the attacks. They started by attacking Israelis in Israel, by attacking a jeep of soldiers, and by raining missiles down on Israeli cities. Israel responded by killing al-Jabari, who is he's their Osama bin Laden. He has killed hundreds of people. He has blood on their hands. It's a happy day when a man like that is killed, like it was a happy day when we killed Osama bin Laden. Maybe a sobering day, but a good day. It's a good day when people like that are gone. Now they're heading toward possible full-scale war, but Israel, I think, is being incredibly cautious. They are really trying to get military targets. They have not done a full-scale invasion. President Obama, to his credit, has fully defended Israel's right to defend itself, as have communities around the globe. And here's something that I find not surprising, but you might find surprising. The Egyptian president, Morsi, who I've argued is not really a Muslim Brotherhood Hamas-type guy, that he's a guy, yes, he's from the Muslim Brotherhood, but it's different from Hamas is Muslim Brotherhood, but Hamas is out to destroy the state of Israel. I do not believe Morsi is out to destroy the state of Israel. I believe Morsi is out to help the Egyptian people. He's going to fulminate and say awful, awful things, frankly, much as Mubarak did against Israel. But when it comes to practical harm, I don't think he's going to break the treaty, and I think he's already working in the shadows to try to convince Gaza to stand down.
Mark, I hope you're right. I don't believe you are. I think this Morsi guy is really, really bad. Over the weekend, it was very clear that some of the rockets that were being fired into Israel were not coming from Gaza. They were coming from Egypt. And
from Sinai?
From Sinai, and that's a really, really bad thing. Why is he not stopping that?
I hadn't heard that. That's interesting.
Why are the Palestinians? Why is Hamas doing this now? They're doing it because they perceive that there was a lack of support for Israel from Obama. When you publicly rebuke and keep the Israeli prime minister cooling his heels for 3 hours while you go off and have dinner with your kids and then come back and say, oh, yes, I'm sorry, Prime Minister, were we in a meeting, blah, blah. This sends a signal to the world that can be misread by Hamas, and that's why they started this attack. And it is a shame that it took the president 5 full days to utter his first word of support for Israel, which he finally did yesterday when he was in Burma.
He issued support.
The first time he spoke out was yesterday in Burma, and
I don't think
it's disgusting that it took him 5 days.
I'll check that.
When you tell the world through your actions, not through your words, through your actions, that you are not going to support Israel, you encourage their enemies to attack them, and that's why this is happening.
Is there any doubt in your mind that what's going on behind the scenes is some pretty stern words from President Obama and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton to President Morsi of Egypt saying, look, you want U.S. aid? You want to be part of the good guys? You want to be part of the West? You want to have the development aid you need to make your country a better place? You've got to respect that peace treaty, and is there any doubt in your mind that, one, they're saying that, and two, that Morsi is working behind the scenes telling Hamas, hey, cool it. I mean, he's trying to get
there's
really
doubt,
do the same thing Mubarak did.
There's doubt in my mind. I don't know what Secretary Clinton, I mean, this whole thing, I don't know what they base their decision points on. Foreign policy has been a failure from the beginning when it comes to dealing with the Middle East. He started off by saying, if you unclench your fist, I'll extend my hand. He extended his hand, and nobody has unclenched their fist. We are less respected, and more importantly, we are less feared in the Middle East than we used to be, and that is a shame, and that's why they feel like they can risk these things and attack our ally Israel in a clearly one-sided operation started and committed by Hamas. This was not a joint thing. This was a one-way thing. Hamas started this.
Of course Hamas started this, but I really don't think you can blame President Obama for this. Look, Hamas started a war when George W. Bush was president with Israel. Mubarak, frankly, had a cold peace with Israel under Bush. He has one. Egypt has one under Obama. Mubarak worked behind the scenes, but not out in public, to try to resolve the issues between Gaza and Israel. Morsi's doing the same thing. Iran was developing a nuclear weapon under Bush. They're developing a nuclear weapon under Obama. I'm not saying any of these things are good. They're not. But I don't see any real difference between the way the Arab world is acting now and the Middle East is acting now than they did 6 years ago.
It's worse. We don't have the respect and we don't have the fear. They think they can do anything. They don't believe we have Israel's back. They think that is just rhetoric, which I believe it is as well. I don't believe the president has Israel's back. I don't, Mark. I'm sorry. He would not have publicly embarrassed Prime Minister Netanyahu on multiple occasions intentionally if he had Israel's back.
No.
He doesn't.
Israel
is they are our strategic ally in the Middle East, and he wants nothing to do with them.
I remember the last war between Hamas and Israel, and I remember George W. Bush, I remember Condoleezza Rice, urging restraint on both sides publicly. Obama has publicly only said Israel has the right to do what it has the right to do.
No, he's urged that they not do a ground war. He said that. He said, I don't want,
I think they're doing that quietly.
Publicly, don't do a ground war,
Listen, most Israelis don't want a ground war because a ground war leads to lots of deaths and arguably doesn't resolve anything. I mean, Israel can do whatever it wants to do for its security, but it's a democracy, and frankly, the Israeli support for this operation, which is very, very high, goes down below 50% in Israel if they do a ground war. But look,
the right thing would have been, whatever Israel thinks they need to do for their national security, we got your back,
and
Prime
that's what
Minister.
President Obama has said.
He didn't say it. He told
Let me move
them
on
not to do it.
Another issue that I know you specifically wanted to raise, and that is Benghazi. The Republicans, Fox News particularly, has been hitting Benghazi since the incident happened. And most of the rest of the country, I think, in the world says, so we didn't get all the intelligence right a week after, we got it right 3 weeks after, and suddenly that's Susan Rice's problem, that's Obama's problem. They're doing a full investigation, they should do a full investigation, but this idea that there's some conspiracy or grand cover-up here because the intelligence services issued a report that Susan Rice read on the national news shows, and then they corrected it later. How is this some big scandal? Right. How is this Benghazi Gate, as Fox calls it?
We both know that General Petraeus concluded within 3 hours that this was an al-Qaeda attack. We know that the talking points from the CIA out to the community specifically mentioned this was an al-Qaeda terror attack.
The first draft did. The first draft did.
When it left the CIA, that's what it said. When it wound up in Susan Rice's hands, apparently it was not an al-Qaeda terrorist attack.
Well,
I want to know.
And why is that?
I want to know who changed those talking points
Fair
and
enough.
Why and who knew about it.
Well, we know why. They've already said why. Petraeus said why. He said why because he didn't want al-Qaeda to know that we were onto them at that moment, because it would, if we let them know at that moment we were onto them, it would reveal sources. That's what they tell us. I don't know. I didn't read the secret information.
I want to know
either.
why the president went to the UN 13 days later and said that this amorphous movie that nobody ever saw and stuff like that was the preeminent cause. And I want to know why. And I want to know why the guy who made that movie is in jail now, and they're not letting him out for any. I mean,
he's in jail for something.
He would never.
He's not in jail for the movie.
Been brought in than if the president hadn't cited him as the cause of an international scene.
He's in jail because he's on probation for a whole bunch of... This guy has had several identities and bank fraud and a whole... He's got a long series
of
stuff.
If the president hadn't cited him, he wouldn't be in jail.
He's not in jail because of the video.
All right. I want to know why the president went to the UN and mentioned 6 times it was a video when everybody at that point knew it wasn't a video.
Well, first of all, Mike, I don't think there's any dispute, even on your side, that the huge invasion of the Cairo embassy, the huge demonstrations, the people who did scale the walls, they didn't get in, they didn't kill anybody. It wasn't a terrorist attack. It was a protest, and it was due to this terrible little film there. I don't think you dispute that.
Pathetic little film.
Pathetic, whatever. Propaganda piece.
It was a cartoon.
It was a cartoon. Of course it was. But you don't dispute that that's the reason it happened in Cairo, do you? Because I don't think anyone does. About Cairo.
I don't have any specific information, but when
I haven't heard any dispute about Cairo.
But when the administration lies to us intentionally about what happened in Benghazi, it makes me question what they're saying about Cairo.
If no one disputes that I've heard of any reputable source disputing what happened in Cairo, the incident in Benghazi happened that evening. Cairo happened the morning of September 11th. Benghazi happened the evening of September 11th. The initial reports that I read in the Washington Post, including some that cited General Petraeus, of all people, said that the incident took place over many hours, that they didn't attack, they didn't succeed in the first attack, they ran home and got fire mortars and then succeeded in the attack. So it sounded like a case where, yes, they were terrorists, yes, they cased out the joint, yes, of course, they're bad people intending to do awful things, but they hadn't worked out perhaps the exact day or time. It may not have been planned for that day. It may have been planned, but not for that day. And they're still trying to figure out exactly what happened there. The fact that the intelligence is trying to put the pieces together is a good thing. And the fact that they're giving us their assessments, even if they're preliminary, rather than telling us nothing at all, is also a good thing.
Mark, the intelligence is put together. We know what happened. There's no more need for an investigation. We need to know who changed the talking points.
Fine.
I want to know who briefed Susan Rice. I want to know when they briefed her.
Fine.
I want to know who else was in the room, and I want to know if David Axelrod was in the room during that briefing.
I strongly doubt it. But you know what? Those are fair questions.
I think David Axelrod was there via phone if he wasn't in the room.
I strongly doubt it, but those are fair questions, and I'm not afraid of that investigation. I don't think the president is either.
Okay. I want to know where was the president when he was notified of this. I want to know where he went immediately and who he met with, and I want to know what orders he gave immediately on the spot. Not a day later, not a week later. Oh, well, I've ordered the full investigation. I want to know what orders he gave relative to saving those American lives on the spot when he was briefed, and I want to know who was in the room when it happened.
The president has said that the moment he heard of it, that he ordered that all steps be done.
When did he hear of it? I want to know when he heard of it.
It's a fair question.
Where was he?
It's a fair question. It's like when I remember when George Bush was reading My Pet Goat and heard of September 11th, and he stopped and he kept reading for 7 minutes. It was a fair point of criticism there. It's a fair point to know what the president could have done. I don't know that he could have done anything once he heard. At that point, unfortunately, it was probably too late. But it's a fair question. It's a fair question, and let's all remember the day in the Rose Garden afterward when he talked about acts of terror. He's referring to Benghazi. We've had that argument before. Hey, Mike, always a pleasure. Until the next election, I'll have you on before that. Folks, if you want to talk about the show, just go to marklevinetalk.com. Leave a comment there. I'd like to hear from you. You can also follow me on Twitter at marklevinetalk. Let me know what you thought of tonight's show. Thanks again to my guest, Mike.